All right, we are live. Welcome to Pixel Fondue live stream with Foundry. We've got the MODO 13 release today, and with us is Shane Griffith, fresh back from China with the beard. Greg Brown, newly promoted. What's your official title now?
I'm not sure. No, design. Yeah, product design.
Product design.
Yeah,
product designer. Okay, so it's staying within the Brown extended family, so to speak.
Yeah.
We got a lot of them. Yeah, actually.
There's a lot of Browns. There's a Mark Brown.
There's a lot of browns, a lot of whites, and a lot of marks, and a lot of grays.
Yeah, you can actually find on Facebook the Brown family photo that we took in London about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to check that out. And last but not least, we have Matt Cox, who has not been on before, but Matt's been in the MODO community a long time, first as a user, and now he's the principal engineer of design, just sort of the architect of MODO and colorway as well. And so Matt's going to talk about some of the technical things, in particularly arrays in MODO 13 that's coming out here. And yeah, so here we are. And so right off the bat, I need to arrange some things. I sort of started before I was quite ready. I want to get some comments coming up on the side. But Shane, why don't we just talk about the acquisition right off the bat? Maybe Shane had put up a forum post a couple days ago, but might as well reiterate that for people who haven't seen it. And anything new you can say. Foundry is acquired by Roper Technologies. Is it Roper Technologies or just Roper?
Roper. That's a good question. I think it's Roper Technologies. That's the group that we're within Roper.
It's a technology company.
Yeah.
All right.
So obviously this is all very new news, even to us. It is something that started to get spun up towards the end of last year within the board and senior staff, and it accelerated quite quickly towards just literally the last few weeks of this month. But yeah, I mean, overall, I just really, I think it couldn't be a better situation for us, and gives us such a pressure off our back, if you will, to a certain extent, and gives us a really solid sense of stability. It's probably the two best things I can kind of reiterate about the situation that we're now in.
Stability is nice.
Yeah, and it's different. The acquisitions of the past were really more a change of the guard, going from one venture capital firm to another. And now this is much more permanent. So I think there is a very distinct difference between Carlyle to HD Capital to now Roper. This is something that is truly intended to be much more permanent of an acquisition at this point. So for all of the the various different doom and gloomers out there that are worried about us getting acquired from a company, whatever it may be, that begins with the letter A. I think that's a lot less likely at this point in time for many, many years to come.
There's a couple of those companies, by the way, that start with some.
But the other really cool thing about Roper is just their background and their history in how they manage their subsidiaries is really interesting. It doesn't really change much or anything for my day-to-day or others around me. So for the most part, we're still very much an independent company operating as we were. But I think, the big difference is now it is much easier for me personally to think a lot longer term with the product, and start plotting a course towards things that you would be much bigger change. And we had already kind of started to do some of that stuff this year in this roadmap. But now I think it just helps us position resources around things a little bit easier for those bigger, longer arc ventures that we have in front of us.
Great. So I feel good about it as well. And in fact, I think most users just, unless they miss the press release, I don't think they're really going to notice much right off the bat, right? I think it's going to be we're sort of used to this.
It'll be pretty. I'm going to Austin in a couple weeks to meet with one of the VPs from Roper. but they'll probably make their rounds, get to know us for a month or two, and then, you know, kind of let us have at it and continue to do what we do. That's the reason why they acquired us, because we're really good at executing on our business plan as is, and they're really there to assist us and help us along on that venture as best as possible.
That's great. It's also encouraging to see, you know, that the Foundry has value, not Foundry, Foundry has value as a company, and another technology company is interested in it. It's just as users, again, if you are slaving away in front of your computer every day with something as complex as a 3D program that takes, you know, a good year of your life to become good at, if you have to suddenly switch, it does give you a sense of security that, you know, clearly this company is seen as a valuable company with growth opportunities and is being acquired by another technology company who you know, is going to give them the tools to succeed. So it should be a good feeling all around. Is my feeling.
Yeah, I very much agree. I hope the community feels that way too. So far, the response has been really positive, and
Yeah,
it's good to see that too. I think, you know, only time will tell, but there really is. In my opinion, there's nothing to fear at this point in time. I think this is the best possible of outcomes for us.
That's great. So that's that, and there'll probably be maybe some more information coming if you share more things in the forum. And Shane tends to just put up forum posts or get on Slack every once in a while, and when he's got something he feels he wants to talk about. So keep a look out on that. So I want to move on. We're going to talk about, well, actually, Shane, let's just stick with you for 1 second. Could you just talk a little bit about, I know Foundry had started a educational promotion program. Could you just give it a lowdown on that? If you're a student watching or an educator or want to move in that direction, a lot of animators towards their careers, maybe looking towards going into education. What do we have on that front?
Yeah, so currently, I think we kicked this off, I want to say SIGGRAPH last year. And it's been a little silent. We've been turning up the volume on it a little by little and getting more marketing around it. But if you're a student in school anywhere, you can just go up to our website, go to the educational page, submit your information, and you can get a free copy of MODO, a free 1-year license of MODO for right now. We're hoping that we can expand that program, but for right now, it's a free 1-year license, and it's been pretty well received.
Does that include Mari as well? And
Nuke? I think so. That I'm not 100% sure.
I think it might, but it's worth checking out because I think you can dip your toe into all the Foundry software that way. But
I think it was what used to be the Creation Collective, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't actually manage that side of the business, so
okay.
Those are a little bit of details that I don't get too involved with. But yeah. I think, you know, the main point is we're trying to make it much more easier for people to get started with the product, get a lot more MODO artists out there using it, expand our footprint more, much like what we do with Indy and other vehicles that we have to try to broaden the entry point for the product.
Great. Okay. Just wanted to put that out there. Greg Brown, let's talk about Greg Brown for a minute, because Greg Brown has been promoted to the MODO product designer, which was previously occupied by Andy Brown, which if you're a MODO user, everybody's known Andy for, since MODO 101 for over 10 years, who is a fantastic modeler and somebody, again, who came out of the MODO community and was a fantastic educator as well. And he's moved on to Nike, and Greg Brown is now in place, but there's a lot of similarities between the two. Greg Brown is also a fantastic artist and has been involved in MODO as a user prior to coming over to Foundry. And so I think it's really important as users to know that there's another user who's somebody who's an expert at the program, who's used it in production, who's actually working to help architect the program now. And Greg, do you want to speak to that a little bit, how your experience as a user is going to sort of help you approach, or how that's going to help you approach this job?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so first off, the way that I'm approaching any sort of feature design is by, abusing myself, working on projects that make me suffer and make me angry, and
That's
that
the
guiding.
best way to learn something.
It really is. Like, I mean, you're not going to be motivated otherwise. And the reason why 3D artists are so passionate about the things they want to see in an application are because they're in that application all day long. So I feel that's an important thing to replicate, even though I don't necessarily have to hit a project deadline on a piece of artwork, every week. I still want to try and maintain that process for motivation.
Yeah, and definitely giving yourself projects helps you work through all aspects of a program, and helps you find sort of the shortest path to various workflows and tools that you want to you need to work on or improve or implement. And so I think that's a great route that we're continuing to go on. And Greg, by the way, is also a really good presenter. And you've seen him; he presents at SIGGRAPH, and Andy was really well known for making videos and things. I don't know if Greg, if you're going to be doing that, but Greg is a really good MODO demo artist as well.
I only have size 9 shoes. I'm pretty sure Andy's are like 35 or something like that. But my feet are growing, so we'll see how that goes.
Feet are growing. All right.
Yeah. And just to clarify too, did start alongside Andy early on. We were working together initially, so it's not exactly a replacement per se. So I tried to carry on his very large legacy, but had the privilege of working with him for the past, 5 or so months before he moved on to Nike.
Yeah, and we still are actively recruiting to backfill that position. So we have an open role for another product designer on the team. And then another one as well on colorway that I'm recruiting for right now too.
So the future is intense conversations about features with some lucky person out there.
All right. So you are hiring. That is good to know. Okay. And Matt, Matt is here for a couple of reasons. One, he's going to be talking about a bit of a technical implementation of a new feature set in MODO concerning arrays, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But I just wanted Matt take a minute for Matt to introduce himself. Now, I remember Matt early on as just, again, a MODO user, a technical user at that, but he's just a guy posting on the forums, posting cool stuff. Maybe I know that MDD plugin, some of that stuff. Did you do that before you were at Foundry, or is that after you were at Foundry?
Yeah, I did a few plugins. So that's how I started. Kind of got noticed, I think, by Brad back in the day. So that was I was just trying to work out how long I've been using MODO for, and I think it goes back to 2005, I think, which is 14 years, which is a little scary. So yeah, 14 years, and then I've been part of the MODO development team for 8 years.
For 8 years,
yeah,
right. Yeah. That's a great way to get noticed, by the way, is if you are interested in this industry and in a career in this industry, put yourself out there. Put yourself out there with writing and making kits or doing training or plugins. You'll make a name for yourself really quickly. It's a small world. And then you said 8 years with Foundry, or?
Well, it's 8 years, but it's been obviously a couple of years at Luxology. But 8 years working with the MODO dev team. So, yeah.
And you were actually, so you're in England now, in English, obviously. But you were in California for a bit, weren't you?
Yeah, so I spent 3 years out there, kind of working, kind of more alongside Alan and Stuart, and kind of getting as much of that information into my head about the core of MODO, so we can kind of take it forwards. And I'm back here in the UK now, which I must say, the weather's not as good, but
yeah, you can see the sun streaming in. Here. I'm probably about 20 miles south of where you were. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the chat here. Somebody's chat name is Amiga Demos. There we go. Kindred Spirit, Amiga. I've got an Amiga 500 sitting in the other room over here. So Matt, so you got to work along with Stuart and Alan Hastings and Stuart Ferguson, who are creators of Lightwave 3D and MODO, and have been in the industry since there was an industry. That must have been a great learning opportunity for you.
It was. It was a great opportunity to kind of bounce ideas off them, but also just kind of learn as much of that information and kind of plan out a lot of kind of how can we solve some of these problems with MODO, and what can we do as the next step for the product. So I mean, when you look at it, a lot of the work on the procedural system came out of that time, and still working on a lot of that now. Mostly pulling my hair out over fixing performance problems, but yeah, it was a great opportunity.
But you were really there then for sort of the ground floor for the procedural system, the deformation system, and later became mesh ops. I mean, you've been there since the beginning and really have a thorough understanding of that.
Yeah, I mean, the procedural system was I think modest. So well,
I was gonna say, he's going to be really modest here, but I'll speak for him. He wrote it. So, he's the one that gave birth to that child, and has shepherded along all the way here.
And do you have a formal education in programming?
Not really. My background's in animation, so I did game animation, but kind of I think I've been dabbling a lot longer than 14 years or with programming, so it's
that is just incredible to me. That and you see this in technology. It's funny. Like here's another little anecdote. My son's best friend's dad I was driving with, and we're just kind of getting to know each other. And so asked me where I went to college and high school and stuff like that. And I knew he worked at Apple, like a high-level engineer on the iPhone. Worked on the original iPhone, and I was saying, well, where'd you go to college? And he's like, I didn't go to college. I was like, oh, where'd you go to high school? And he went, I didn't finish high school.
Wow.
It's a really amazing industry where you really can be self-made if you're self-motivated. And so it sounds like, yeah, you just found something you liked, picked it up, had some good mentors, implemented this in MODO, and got to work alongside some of the big names in the industry. And but this is Matt. Matt has been responsible for a lot of what we see in MODO over the last 7-8 years. And I'd always wanted to get Matt on just for a one-on-one interview. So it's nice to have him join us here. And we will definitely be getting back to you in a minute, talk about arrays. Okay, so I don't know. Should we talk about MODO 13?
Yeah. You want to get into it a little bit?
So first, I guess it's released. Like you can go get that right now.
It is out there as of I think roughly an hour ago. Things started turning on an hour or 2 hours ago, but I think everything is kind of live now. Mike's behind the scenes frantically writing the community post. I think he's probably already posted that. With all the links to everything. But if you go to your My Accounts page, if you're a current subscription or maintenance customer, you should be able to get to the download there or get to it through the bottom of the main website. You'll see a product downloads link down there, or you just log in and get the download there. The trial, I'm told if you've trialed the product recently, that may not be working right now, but that'll get fixed hopefully before the close of the day here. And then everybody should, the way it typically works is everybody, regardless if you just trialed 12.2 yesterday, you should be able to get a new trial at 13.0.
Great.
Starting today. So we reset that clock every time we drop a new release out there.
So 13's out. There's going to be a ton of videos. So, I want to go through a list of features here and sort of hit the highlights, but and maybe we could do a little demo or something. But really, it's best to go watch all the meticulously produced feature videos. There's something like 30 or 40 of them here.
I think we're pushing 45 plus 49 quick-lit videos on this one. There's a lot of detail. Like the main feature highlights rolled into, I think, 5 overview videos. And then with anything, we have to, the challenge with marketing a release like MODO or a product like MODO is we have to consolidate and condense a lot of things down into very simple statements. So the real details of the release, you can really only get a sense of when you start getting into those quick-lit videos, or also go to learn.foundry.com. And with inside there, you'll find a link to MODO and then the release notes page, which will give you all the latest what's new with the release information. So there's a lot of detail inside those documents if you really want to get down into it.
Yeah, I thought it was actually real. I was looking at the PDF. There's a PDF. It's really well documented. I mean, you guys did a really good job with this. Did we just lose Matt? Fozzie Bear just came up. Oh, there he is. I love that avatar. Okay. So I'm going to just screen share my screen here, and I've got a list of some of the features. We're going to go through them. There's a ton of stuff. It's a big release. What'd you say, like almost 50 videos? I think we'll just kind of talk about some of our highlights. Greg, you can pipe in and talk about some of your favorite stuff. Matt, however you want to do it. I'm just going to kind of go through it this way and talk about what I've seen messing around with MODO over the last 13 beta over the last month or so. So let me share my screen.
For the, I will say, for the first release out of the series, the 0.0 release, this is, I think, pretty easy to say this is the biggest one that we've done yet since going to this model. So since like 10.0, this is the first big 0.0 release. We've typically started the year with a much softer, smaller release. So once you get down in the nuts and bolts of this release, I think you really kind of understand how many features are really there. There's quite a bit.
Was that planned, or it just turned out that way?
Some of it turned out that way. Some of this was intended to be in 12.2. It slipped out a little bit, but actually not a whole lot. I think we're really hitting a good rhythm with this development process right now. And I was just reviewing 13.1 and what we call our backlog management meeting a few hours ago, and we're actually 2 weeks away from starting the lockdown on 13.1, and there's a long list of stuff there as well. So we're really firing on all cylinders right now as a development team and a unit, and putting out really good quality releases.
Yeah, I've got to say, you guys haven't slipped at all. If anything, it seems like things are coming out faster. I mean, I think I just installed 12.2 the other day because I tend not to bump things up when I'm in the middle of a project. And then here we are at 13, and there's a couple of 13 features that are really super useful that we'll get to in a second here. So let's go through these features, and then we'll throw it over to the community and we'll look at some at the chat, see if there's some questions, and we'll have Matt talk about arrays. And so let's do that. And
yep.
So let me share my WordPad.
And you've been using it for a while, Greg, on beta, right? So anything that you think is interesting from your perspective would be kind of good to know.
Shortest path selection, like it's the simple things that like make such a difference. The find shortest path selection is probably my favorite thing. It makes so many things so much easier. Yeah,
this is super cool. This is super, I want to see more stuff like this.
That with the fill selection combined, oh my goodness, with complex models, it makes it so much easier to build average selections.
Yeah, in fact, I'll demo this one. Find shortest path is super cool. I'll actually do a share MODO here in a second and do that. These two right here are really interesting. Quick align and ground align. There's some old align scripts that Seneca Menard had written a number of years ago that people have used for a long time. And the sort of concept where you can quickly align geometry, both rotationally, sort of align it, straighten it out and align it to the ground, and also drop it to the ground has been implemented as tools in this version of MODO, and you can do all kinds of stuff like align things to the ground, to the origin, to other elements. It's an interactive interface, and so go watch the videos on those where you can really quickly and make a couple of selections, and with a right click and a left click, you can quickly align things rotationally and drop things to the ground. It's really cool. Linear fall off align. I'll just go through these quickly. This is something that it's nice to see an old tool get updated. So if you use linear fall off, you guys all know that it never starts off where you want it to. And now when you select linear fall off, it sort of snaps to sort of a local geometry and sort of the orientation that you would sort of intuitively expect it to, and you can start using it. And you also updated, so let's take a look at, updated cylinder and base scale change for replicator, which base scale change for replicator just lets you not just randomize the scale for your replicated items, but also sort of adjust and grow them all or shrink them all at once and keep that variation as well. But let me actually bring up MODO here really quick and show the selection alignment, because it's really pretty cool. let's see here. Whoops, go back here. Greg, go ahead and pipe in with anything else in there you want to. I know this is a little ad hoc, but I do want to show that quick shortest path of selection.
Okay, let's see some of the other features that I'm kind of a fan of. The quick align and ground align is intelligently engineered, so it suits if you're building out large scenes that are just for regular rendering, but also to realign things to your origin for more game-centric workflows and item-based workflows. UVs, it seems like every release we tend to add one thing to UVs. MODO's UV toolset is probably my favorite, and UV pack by item, that is absolutely huge, especially for UDIM workflows, and also the more intelligent split commands. I always liked the more recent split feature, but now we've got more control over how it splits, which direction it splits, and so we're just making UV workflows even easier, and more stuff on that in the future, of course, as well. So
yeah, you guys do update UVs every single release. I mean, MODO UVs have never been glossed over on any release.
No.
Remember, if you can see my screen here, you'll see that over here in the selection tab, which I really appreciate you guys put up here, because all this stuff used to be up in a menu here. And it's nice to see it over here in the actual interface. But it's really just a toggle you can turn on. So let's say I'm in polygon mode and I have a polygon. You can see this interactive highlighting going on here. And so it's just sort of selecting the shortest path between whatever two polygons are selected. So like this and this and this, and you can just really quickly do it. And you can also fill your selection in like Greg was saying on the inside, but it works with every single component. So I can do just holding shift here, and I'm just sort of clicking, and it's finding the path for me. And then you can convert that if you want to, or whatever else. But it's a really cool tool that I think a lot of artists, especially game artists, are going to really like. And let's just, while I'm here, why don't I do the ground align stuff as well? So the cylinder, the cylinder's been updated, you can actually do a radial. Just do this. You can see we've got this now. So whoops, there it is. So you can see there's a radial option for the capping, which is nice. I'm just going to keep this as a single poly. And okay, so we've got a cylinder here. I'm going to just kind of bring up the work plane so you can see this. And I'm just going to kind of shuffle this off to the side and sort of, control, clone it over and rotate this guy around. And what's cool is, I believe it's under the deform menu. And you have these, down here, quick align and ground align. So I can grab a couple of, I can grab this, let me just bring up my tool properties here. And you'll see there's a connected geometry, and by selection and drop to ground, I'm actually going to change this to rotate to ground. So I can grab, I can grab these guys, grab a couple of polygons there, and I believe right click will rotate the ground, and then middle click will drop them down. So it's pretty cool. And you can select with connection and do all this other kinds of stuff. So you can grab the whole thing that is connected to like a polygon island. You can also drop to origin, or you can also align to each other with a quick align, which is a similar kind of thing, but you can align to other types of geometry. So I thought those two tools are super useful, and things that people had to previously go hunt down old scripts for. They're sort of convoluted. Now they're just interactive tools. This the quick align is actually kind of interesting because you've got some new tool handles on there. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that off the top of my head after using those for just a little bit. But quick align, I believe I just hover and click, right? And then I just aligned it to the center of this polygon. So I believe I can also do orientation and hover and do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sweet.
The key thing is it's on the component mode. It's not item mode transformations.
Right. So we are in component mode here, and we've had alignment tools for item mode for quite some time. And you can see what we're here.
But then getting your meshes back into alignment to actually get them properly oriented for item mode has always been a nightmare. And so you can always get your stuff back to proper component alignment to go back into proper workflows with item mode.
And this is one of the things new users sometimes have a hard time with, where you see this is just one item and there's no rotation of values on here. So they start going into item mode and start like trying to like straighten it out and do all this stuff and move it around, and you're moving your transforms. You don't want to do that. You want to do it in component mode. And it's sort of one of those event horizon things, but you understand how MODO works. And so there's some great new tools for that. Let me switch over to let me just grab this list again so we can take a peek. But so yeah, a lot of UVing tools that we talked about. Actually, this what's that?
Cut map. Cut maps are great.
Yeah, the cut map is essentially like a new sort of vertex map, right? So you can view the UV seams in the viewport.
And preserve them so that you can keep it. Because I mean, I never find I UV once, it's UV multiple times. It's helpful to have your UVs at an early state in a model and being able to recall just quickly and easily, you know, what your UV seams are to rerun the unwrap or relax or whatever else is hugely useful.
Right. And then you also have...
and you don't have to select your UV anymore. It'll just be automatically selecting that that cut map. You can have it automatically select the correct UV map too. So there's a lot of just workflow enhancements in there.
Yeah, and there's a couple of good videos up for that. And by the way, I think the model in that is a Bluefin Tuna that Andy Brown modeled for me a number of years ago. That's a demo model. UV split tool, the brush-based splitting, is that new in 13 or is that also in 12?
That's, I believe, in 11 is when that originally came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but now we have the option to decide how it's going to split. Is it going to split from the top, from the bottom, or is it going to split directly in between the two? And so, yeah, a lot more control over how they get split apart.
That one was new to me. So if you haven't seen this is actually super cool because I hadn't really seen this before. Where let me just get my UV window up here and hover over to my UV tool. This new interface, by the way, that you guys put out in 12 is just awesome. Like
the way it should have been. Yeah.
It's such a huge thing, and it's such a huge thing going forward because you've implemented all these new tools in 13 within this new interface. And if you're a late adopter and you haven't moved over yet because you're stubbornly hanging on to the old one, I'm telling you, as somebody who's sitting in front of MODO 10 hours a day for the last 12 years or whatever, this interface is super well thought out.
It's fast.
It takes only a week or two, and you're converted over to it for sure.
The thing I loved about the tabs-based, like I guess workflow essentially, was the isolated tool sets. But what drove me nuts was refreshing the GL view or loading up those new viewports. And it would seem like Andy actually managed to maintain the discoverability, but then also make loading new viewports like the UV window or making a switch to the advanced viewport, whatever. It's much faster. And so this was very well thought out.
Yeah, it's great. And this is the split tool, which I had never used. You could just paint your splits on there with a brush. Did not know we had that. So always learn something new. So I thought that was really cool. There's been some improvements to that. But yeah, UVing in MODO I think it's a real good foot in the door for a lot of people who are experienced in another program and have always sort of looked sideways at MODO, like, okay, should I try this program or not? What do I want to do with it? Just bring one of your models in you made in Maya or Max or whatever, and UV it in MODO. Just focus on UV tools. You'll get a feel for the program. And one of the most amazing things in MODO is there's not separate tools for. You look at Maya. There's a whole separate set of UV tools for transforming and deforming UVs. In MODO, it's just all the same sort of tools. Like you want to use smooth, it's the same tools. So once you start, kind of feeling how you can move around in the viewport and manipulating UVs in MODO, and also just seeing them all, like something as simple as sort of seeing this nice list over here is some programs don't even really have that. You have to hunt around for it. So that's a great thing to do in MODO. So there's that, and then moving on, getting to arrays here, Matt, shortly. I just want to cover a couple of other things quickly. So animation and rigging. Now, there's been a lot of people who, like me, who use MODO for animation. I do a ton of animation in MODO, and so there's a few in here that are big for me, and that's in particular this one right here, Falloffs lid is is huge, in my opinion. That's a great tool for effects, something we've been asking for a long time. I'll show that in a second here. We also have animation layers. And Greg, do you want to give a quick rundown of that?
Basically, it allows you to store bits of animation data and replace them additively or as an override where you're completely replacing it. And so you could say, for instance, have a character with mocap animation on it, and you decide, I'm just not happy with how the arm is actually moving with this mocap animation. I want to maybe go ahead and do that manually. You could go ahead and select the root of for the arm itself and go ahead and override that entire animation and return it back to its bind state. And you can layer these on top of each other, and in some cases blend animations together. And so it's a much more it's much more in line with MODO's rigging system as far as order of operations like deformations are concerned, except it's applied to animation and actually how you combine animation clips together.
Right, and it works with MODO's actor methodology. So you have an actor, which is a set of items and channels, and so you have actors, actions, and being able to layer these now. Also riggable actions, which we had in 12, which are really cool. I should do a demo on Pixel Fondue using like a Falloff probe or something like that with a riggable action is really neat. So you see these features starting to layer up, and you get an idea of where this is going. So MODO's animation tools are absolutely being worked on, correct, Shane? I mean, you're seeing.
Yeah, we started shorting up the volume on this. I think actors came in 12.1 or 12.2. I can't remember which one they had actually ended up in. But we've been working on that through the course of last year. And these are all kind of the building blocks, if you will, of where we're going with hopefully a full NLA system. And right now that's kind of on the docket for later in this year, but our focus primarily for the next step of all this work is really the performance side of things. So Matt and team are really heads down, working really hard, trying to solve a number of different performance issues to layer with all of these really great animation features that we've had for many, many years. So we're going to kind of keep doing both in parallel, but hopefully you can kind of appreciate the challenge of that task. Is probably similar to changing the engine on a Formula One car as it's lapping Laguna Seca. So Matt definitely has his work cut out for him, Matt and team. And so far so good. We're tracking pretty well for a lot of that work to start slotting into the next release in the series.
Well, that's great. We'll get back to that in a minute when we talk about sort of where we're going with this. But I think that was a pretty big feature there. And
yeah, this is probably the biggest new feature addition as far as amount of work involved, and then also just the big ticket aspect of this. Between this and a few things that are coming up on your list here, these were these were in work as we were, some of the team was working on 12.2. We've actually had Mark kind of on the side working on animation layers instead of working on the 12.2 release. So again, part of how we structured the team and the development process is really working quite well for us to allow developers to leapfrog, do a couple bigger ticket things, while continuing to augment the rest of the release with a lot of everyday features and polish to their product.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about arrays. Let's get to. I want to show a couple more things before we get to arrays. And first of all, we have this automatic data conversion. Is this something you worked on, Matt? Essentially, we have to look up so as you know, there's different data types like floating points and strings and whatever and integers and now these are converted automatically, so you can just go like a string output right into an integer or something, correct?
Yeah, it makes it kind of a lot easier to use the schematic and to kind of use rigging in MODO, because you no longer have to think about, okay, I have a matrix here and I want to transform that into a vector, and think about, okay, well, how do I get from one to the other? You don't really have to think about what is a matrix, or what is a string. It's just a value, and you can copy that from one thing to the other and let MODO take care of how to convert from one data type to the other. So it kind of takes a lot of the the insider knowledge out of rigging, I guess, because you have to come to rigging with a lot of background knowledge about what these data types mean. And a lot of it is kind of done from a programming point of view. Whereas with this automatic value conversion, it's kind of saying you don't need to think about that. All you need to think about is really what kind of data is it? Is it a transform? Okay, well, I want that transform to feed into this, or if it's just a bunch of text, and maybe that text has got a number in it. Well, then really it's just a number and it can go straight into a math node. So that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's actually, I was kind of fascinated by that, because you can actually just like take a string data type, like 1 meter, which is just text, might as well say pineapple, but you could feed that into, a floating point or an integer data type, and it just sees 1, just grabs it out of there.
Yeah.
And so it means fewer nodes. You don't have to put in a bunch of conversion nodes when you're rigging. So a cleaner schematic, a little bit easier to pick up and learn if you're getting into the schematic. So there's been quite a few schematic improvements actually in 13. Again, I wonder, there's quite a few in 12.
There's a huge amount in 12 too. The big one in here is the disable links.
Right.
Code, which is a really nice feature to be able to just, instead of deleting that link, you can just turn it off, and then it allows you to evaluate parts of your schematic a lot easier.
And the alignment.
Yeah.
Oh,
alignment options.
Right.
Thank you, Andy. If you're watching this, thank you for that one. That was great, along with the backdrops. Combined, now the schematic views are readable if you are organized, which you should be. Right.
So if we go, let's say position Y to position Z here, and so you can see if I'm moving this, right? All I did was link those up in the schematic, but now I can select this and just press H, kind of like hiding geometry, and now that link is disabled. And this is something we couldn't do before. So this evaluation is still there. We used to have to disconnect it and check things out and then reconnect it. And now, so there it is, enabled again. And but you can actually just disable and re-enable there right in the schematic, which is pretty awesome. And there's been a bunch of different alignment things. So I'm trying to remember, there's a ton of keyboard shortcuts for this. And
I don't remember all of them. It's like up and left and right and a whole bunch of
using arrow keys and I just put them in. So right. So this is something you're gonna have to commit to muscle memory, but oh man, I wish I could remember.
It'll happen very quickly. It's with mouse over the schematic view. I'm not reading this at all right now. Use Control Alt up, down, right, or left arrows, and it'll separate nodes the same vertical. And for up, down, or horizontal for right, left. And so you're able to separate things. You'll be able to align things. Just quick and easy to remember key binds once you get familiar with it.
Right. So there's a bunch of key binds that'll enable you to, and I don't have them memorized, sorry, but they'll enable you to snap these here or change the distance. You can do it with multiple nodes at once. You can like multi-select and
go with Control Alt up or down.
So Control Alt up or down, Control Alt up or down.
You're gonna need to have them both selected. Select one after the other. Yeah.
This one to this one, and maybe.
You need to have a little bit more of a complex.
Yeah, fair enough.
To make sense of it.
All right. Anyway, but they work because I tried these last night.
We had a whole bunch of mesh nodes there. They would nice evenly spread out and align themselves, and it's
right.
It's just a lot more user friendly between the two releases now.
Let me just do a fall off blend demo real quick, because I think this is a really cool one. So let me just subdivide.
Falloffs in general, for those that don't really know Modo, is another one of those really key features that make Modo unique. There's just a tremendous amount that you can do with Falloffs inside of Modo, and they work with everything. Like you're kind of hinting at with the UV tools. A key aspect of Modo is a lot of the tools that we program kind of once. They work systematically across all the different areas of the product. And
Falloffs combined with action centers are just glorious.
Absolutely. And Falloffs, the same Falloff can work with deformations. It can work with particle systems. It can work with mesh operations. And so there's sort of a universal tool throughout the program. And they can even work with texture fall-offs, which I really need to do a video on that, because that is some really cool stuff. And if you look at, it's a Twitter account that I sometimes link to, Kai's Japanese user. He does some really awesome stuff with fall-offs and that are on there. So we can do like a blend fall-off. You just add it. You can do it in the schematic, or you can do it over here in the stack as well. And then you could add your fall-offs over here. So if I add like a texture fall-off and I just have a transform effector right here. And so if I do like like a checker texture maybe, and
this is completely unscripted too, by the way. Everybody online watching this,
it should work,
nobody asked Greg to demo today yet. He's just
so you can see
it. I love it.
You see the checker texture working here, which is a fall off, and then I can add another fall off. We'll just do a like a radial fall off. And I'm gonna move this above. Matt, here I'm gonna do a feature request. I want that one added above the old one instead of below it. So what's cool is you can do right now, you can see they're sort of additive, but you can change this in the blend fall off mode. And so I can change this to say multiply. And since this isn't on here at all, it's multiplying to 0. And as I move this across, it's now multiplying those two fall offs. And so you've got multiply, you can use your easing on here. It's just, I mean, this type of stuff wasn't doable before and lets you bake to weight maps. And so really, this is going to be just super useful. I mean, think about this for morph animation, doing multiple fall offs, vertex map fall offs with radial fall offs or something like that, blending them together with morph animations with a face or something along those lines. Even though Rich Hurry doesn't like morphs for faces, if you want to look at Rich's stuff. But Rich has been doing a fantastic series for MODO. So this is a really big one, I thought, as well, in addition to animation layering and some of the other stuff on here and some of the schematic stuff. There's one other thing I just wanted to show before we get into arrays, and that is texture referencing. So there, so here we've got a nice sphere, which I will call a sphere, and let me just pull this out of the way and maybe bring up a render view. This. And so, here I've got a mask and a shader tree, but I can add a layer called a material preset. Is that right? This is the one right here, Greg? Right.
I can.
And so it's essentially a material reference. And what it does is it just gives you access to your material library. And so I can bring in any material preset I want to and change it at any time I want to. So it's just a live link to your material library in the shader tree. And so it enjoys all the stuff in the shader tree. You can turn it off, you can turn it on, you can blend it, you can add stuff on top of it, but it's a live link to your material library. So if you think if you're a product designer or something like that, and you have a whole series of plastics or leathers or whatever, I mean, that's awesome, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's intended to facilitate the workflow where you have a master set of materials, a master library of materials. And there's often some type of governance over those materials where in a team environment, you don't want every single artist to have a different rendition of that black, leather material. So this enables them to reference that into every different scene file. And then if they need to make a change to that, the change can be globally done across all of the downstream scenes that reference that. So for many of you that don't think that we're doing anything with referencing, we are doing some things. This is one of those things that we're picking away at with reference workflows. We're also looking at doing something similar with mesh presets as we work a little bit further down into the series this year. But yeah, we're starting to pick away at some of these pain points that are kind of throughout other areas of MODO other than just modeling and UVs.
And you do not have to fill up a material group with preset after preset after preset when you're testing out, your materials. That was a very painful aspect working with the shader tree. That's kind of eliminated now.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, this is just a really easy way to play with different looks in here. And now imagine this same sort of workflow with a mesh and a replicator, right? You want to try different buttons, you want to try different trees, you want to try whatever, and you're just sort of clicking from your preset library, and it's totally non-destructive. pretty awesome. I'm super excited about this one.
Yeah, we were hoping to get mesh presets in there this release, but it needed a bit more work. So that's coming pretty soon. And it's actually being developed right now. I think it might be done, but I don't know for certain. There's a lot. We're making these hard decisions, cutting things off, stabilizing, making sure that the product runs efficient for every drop that we put out there.
Yeah, I think for the materials, it's a super obvious use case right off the bat, and that's in terms of replicators. Or think of a Boolean workflow, and you're Booleaning some different shaped holes into your mech game asset, and you're using a mesh preset instead of an existing mesh in the scene. And you just have a whole library, a whole kit bash. It brings the whole kit bash, thousands of awesome models for $6 per library, ArtStation or whatever, into MODO, where you can experiment with just by almost like selecting a font in Photoshop. This is what I've been asking for a long time. You're just, when you experiment with fonts in Photoshop, you try a font and you're like, and you just kind of keep it highlighted, and you start arrow clicking between, down arrowing all your fonts. You're just checking them out until you like something. You could do that with materials now. And you're going to be able to do it with meshes as well, which I think it's a huge, great implementation. I love this. And I also love this because this is something a person who uses MODO all the time asked for or implemented, either on whether it was Andy or Greg or whoever, Matt, whoever was over there. Clearly, somebody who's familiar with the program put this in there, so I love that. Okay, so arrays. When you jump into MODO 13, you'll notice there's like 15 videos for something called arrays. Like, what is this? How does this help me? What's going on here? What is an array even? And so, Matt, I'm going to let you take over here. And so on a base level, we'll just kick it off. An array is sort of a list. It's a list of values, and we're able to bring these lists and work with them in a procedural nature. And so, Matt, I'm just going to let you go off on this, since you've obviously been putting a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, so I think you kind of summed it well there as kind of an array as a list. I mean, if we think about the evaluation engine in MODO, it's a lot of kind of single values that are being passed around. So, whether you're doing things like adding two numbers together or constraining the transform of one item to another, you're still only dealing with kind of one value at a time. And the kind of challenge there is that for things like meshes or particles or other complex data types, you're rarely dealing with a single value. You're not passing around a single vertex and saying, okay, I want to know the information about that vertex. More often than not, you're passing around all the points on the mesh, and you want to be able to deal with them as a set. Or you're passing around all the particles in the simulation, and you want to manipulate them or use them to drive some other operation in MODO. So for MODO 13, we've kind of expanded the evaluation engine so that you can build rigs that kind of read, modify, and write ranges of values rather than individual values. So that's what we call arrays. So you can sample various things within MODO. So the set is quite small at the moment. So you can sample particle simulations, you can sample text, you can sample curves, and you can sample a basic set of geometry information. And then we've got a set of modifiers that allow you to manipulate that. So whether you're doing things like blending between two arrays or looping over an array and modifying individual values in turn using another rig. And then you can feed that data into a procedural system, so you can use that to create geometry. And we've seen on the beta, people have been doing it to do some really cool things. Whether you're doing things like reading curves and then using that to generate a surface, and you can get a really nice, smooth kind of polygonal surface from that, or really just creating custom tools that we'd never kind of imagine. So I think that's really where the benefit and kind of the win comes from with arrays, because you can use them to create custom tools, custom rigs, and procedural operations that you can then share kind of with other users and really start to build tools and build features that we're probably never going to add in, but you can use them to solve your particular use case. I would say for MODO 13, we've concentrated mostly on procedurals. So, reading data, manipulating it, and then feeding that into the procedural system to create polygons. But the great thing about arrays is they can hold any data type, and they're kind of completely generic. So we could apply this concept to a lot of different systems in MODO. So you can kind of imagine a future where you're using the position information stored in an array and then feeding that back into a particle system, or driving values within an image, or driving shading data or something like that. And I think one of the benefits of the fact that they're so generic is that we have traditionally had a lot of disconnected systems in MODO. You've had the particle system over here and you've got the mesh system over here, and getting them to play well together is a bit of a difficulty. But the fact that you have arrays and you have this evaluation system that can then take these multiple sets of values, we can start to tie these kind of systems a bit close together.
Yeah, I think that's an important note to make here. So we talked about Falloffs just a minute ago. So Falloffs don't just work with the deformation system. They also work with simulations, rigid body simulations, particle simulations. They work with mesh operations, which are slightly different than deformations. And so they're this layer that can go into all these different systems, right? And so arrays, I know they're listed under mesh operations and sort of the release material, but really it's this whole base layer on this cake underneath this foundation, underneath all these other systems. And so it can sample data from a particle system, and it can also feed that data via mesh operation or something like that into the geometry system or the mesh operation system. You said even images or shading. I mean, it sounds like you could take data from a particle system and use that via arrays, grabbing data from all these particles and using it to place colors on a plane, something like that.
For 13, the goal is just on procedurals and just on reading particle data and reading text information. But as I say, it is generic, so it could definitely be expanded to more in future. And of course, it's all accessible to the SDK. So third-party engineers out there, third-party developers can go and build on this and kind of utilize all of this tech to kind of do more cool stuff and to enable more.
Yeah, and so you had mentioned somebody's asking for practical examples, and I know it's a little bit hard to sort of wrap your head around. And maybe I should have tried to load one up here. Think of something simple like this. Like you're just making a polygon in MODO with direct modeling. You select points in a certain order, and so there's a list of points, but also the order you've selected them in, and you hit P and it makes a polygon. We're not really doing that in mesh operations now because we need to hold a list of data. You can do that now. You can grab some points, you can filter them, you can sort them, you can arrange them, and you could make a curve or polygon out of it procedurally. And so what you'll see is people doing some of the beta testers who do some cool stuff, some motion graphics type stuff, will maybe make a sort of a spiral graph of curves procedurally using points and mesh operations with arrays to bring these points in and draw curves using an array to curve tool within MODO. Something like that, Matt, I think would be a practical example.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just seeing if I can find an example to demo here.
I knew you couldn't resist.
The developer's going to demo. Here it comes. Okay. He's an artist.
Oh, give me a second.
The challenge is he has a very unstable build on his system right now. Put that caveat out there even before he shows his screen.
Well, I'm going to let's let Matt get ready in the background, and let's talk about something else here. So for arrays, there's just a ton of stuff. So you're going to see all these videos for arrays, and it's essentially, you have to think of this as the first step forward in a whole nother system in MODO. That's going to allow.
It really is, and that's why this one's a difficult one for us to market. It was a difficult one to put videos around. Not only just it is so deeply technical, but it's a beginning step. And it's a beginning step to something that should be probably branded its own entity, because it greatly expands what we can do procedurally with the product. And brings us a lot closer to something that is, without mentioning too many other products, but it's the easiest way to describe it. But something that is more generative design based, like a Grasshopper or Houdini esque type of a tool, where you are able to push form and shape and really iterations on a design mathematically in that way. So it's kind of the basis of what we're going with this as well, and why we chose to do this. We're entering into a market it's really demanding us to do things like this that are a lot more data-driven design rather than necessarily artistically driven.
You need to channel your inner Brad Peebler and give it some really weird name.
I know, I do. I need to ring him off and get a funky name for this one for sure.
Send him a text.
One of the things that Matt brought up is, users actually creating their own tools, and that is a big part of it. But it's also, we're even leveraging this internally to build new tools. And when we built tools in the past, it was something that was generally kind of canned. It was an entire tool that did one thing in particular. But now Arrays gives the ability for even our developers to leverage this system on their own, and even allow users after the fact to modify tools that we've created, because it'll actually show up as an assembly. So cool stuff coming from that even internally.
Yeah. So you can get into the data there with both hands and sort of like,
and break it however you want. Yeah.
Swear it that way and filter through it and shuffle it off here and there. It is a really big thing. And going forward, there will be a definitely Modo before Arrays and a Modo after Arrays. And it's going to be
I imagine, very quickly people like Alexander and Mario are gonna really just have a heyday with this feature and do some really, really cool stuff with it.
Oh, I'm curious what Alexander is going to do. Alexander, I've linked to him before in some other Pixel Fondue stuff, but he does the most amazing assemblies, sort of VFX type stuff you would see in Houdini in Modo. And he's got to be like the most schematic oriented, or one of the most schematic oriented users. He and Dino, one of the beta testers who puts together all this cool stuff. Matt, just let us know when you're ready. Jump in. No rush on you over there.
Yeah, I can demo now if you want. Just go show
shot. So let's see Arrays from the Modo system architect.
Okay.
I think Matt did quick align too. Is that another one of your little features in this release?
No, it wasn't. No. So this is a medium complexity example, but I think it shows off some of the power of Arrays quite well. So I've broken this down. We've got kind of three main things going on here. At the beginning, we've got this curve, and this is just a Modo curve that's been drawn using the B-spline tool. And then we have these operations here that are sampling the array, the curve into an array. So essentially, we're walking the curve from the beginning to the end, and we're reading the position at each step, and then we're storing that kind of as a single list of positions that we're passing out that can be, read by further things down the line. We also read the tangent information, and we also read the percent we are on the curve, or the kind of, if you imagine 0 is here and 1 is here, it's the percentage between those two values as we move along the curve. So you can see that we're reading those values here, and then we pass them on to this thing called the array operator. And the array operator is kind of like a loop, and it's going to say, essentially, for every element in the array, we're going to do some rig. Now, I'm not going to dig too much into this because it's a little complex, but what we do is we essentially, for every element within the array, we plot the position on a circle, and we keep on doing that continuously along the length of the array, and it gives us this helix. So you can see the output after we perform this rig, and this rig, as I say, is being evaluated per element in the array. So for every one of these numbers here, we perform this rig, and this gives us our updated positions. And then when we have our updated positions, we can feed that into this new procedural operation called create polygons. And create polygons is going to do what the name suggests and create a polygon from the vertex positions defined by the array. So it's going to essentially create a curve going from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3, and that gives us our helix. Now, the cool thing about this is obviously I can come back to the original kind of control here, and I can go in and manipulate this. So I can change the radius or change the velocity, so we have more kind of greater frequency of spirals. But I could go in and I could modify this. I could do things like add a relationship gradient in there, so it would change size along the length of the curve. Or I could do something like read this curve into another array and use that to kind of drive some other operation. So the great thing about this is, as well, I can package this up. I can call it an assembly. I can even collapse it down to an assembly alias, so it shows up in MODO as a full first-class mesh operation, and it's it can be shared with other users. So even though this looks quite complex, you can obviously imagine wrapping this up and sharing it as new kinds of tools, because we don't have a helix operation inside of MODO, but you can build one using arrays and using some of the new tools.
So that's really the big takeaway here, is you don't have to, as a typical MODO user, be able to create that schematic and create a helix around a curve. Somebody's going to do it, and they're just going to send off a mesh operation tool where you draw a curve and you adjust the exposed channels for the radius of the helix or double helix or whatever. If you're doing a DNA animation, you just draw a curve and you grab this new mesh op that is made possible with the array tools that are implemented here. And if you're a technical user, you can go in and make this yourself, and you can plant base pairs along the array and everything else, and probably randomize those. But it's a super powerful set of tools for MODO going forward. Okay, we're going to jump into some questions here real quick because we're jumping up on an hour. But I did want to I skipped over one new big mesh operation, which I wanted to show. And that is, jump back to MODO here. That is the ability to write or to mesh merge a particle system, which is pretty awesome in MODO now. So I can go to particles and I can just do like a radial emitter here, and scooch this out of the way and bring up my time. So I've got some. Let me just make those bigger here. I always like to make my particles blue and bigger. There we go. So lots of particles. So we've been able. So mesh operation or mesh merge is got to be, I don't know, probably the single most useful mesh operation in my opinion. I think mesh merge is super useful. And if you're an After Effects user, I tend to think of it as pre-comping. You're pre-comping your geometry or your voxels or whatever into a new mesh, and then you can do whatever you want with it. And now you can basically pre-comp a particle system now. So we just run a particle simulation. So there's our particle simulation, and here I've got a new mesh, and we'll just call it merge particles, and we can do a merge meshes, and I can just add sources. Let me just grab my particle simulation now. And so if I hide my particle simulation there, I have it as, got to show vertices, and there we are with my, there's my particle system. And now that I have that in a mesh, I can do other things like, whatever. I can add like a bend effector and bend my particles. Look at that. And that's live. And that's super useful if you do medical animations or something, and you're trying to get the blood cells to go, stay in the artery, and they keep, particle systems are hard to control. Well, now I can run a, delete vertex, mesh operation on here and just pick the ones I don't like and get rid of them. Or I can run it through a lattice or whatever. So again, super, super, super useful in my opinion. Okay.
Yeah, right. just as well, the particle features should be transferred over as vertex maps. So we do maintain all the information about the particles, not just position information, which is super useful.
Oh, really? So you'll have, velocity. I see that there. We have a velocity VMAP inside in the merge particle. So we'll do age as well, or particle ID?
Should be, but have to check. But, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, it's a huge new feature. And whoops, I don't think I'm sharing my screen. I just took a look. Okay, so what's Shane? You guys or Greg? Did you want to talk about anything else on this one before we get to some questions?
No, nothing off the top of my head.
The only other quick one that I wanted to mention is the new kit fusing feature inside of Mesh Fusion. You might not have played around with that one too much, Greg, but that one is really, really cool because it brings a very simplistic kit bashing workflow to Mesh Fusion, where you can literally pick only particular parts of that kit that you're going to bash into a Fusion item. You can selectively say these polygons are either going to be additive or subtractive. And then the rest of the kit is just normal MODO geometry. So it's not part of necessarily the entire Fusion mesh or the Fusion item. So it allows you to work really, really quickly and kind of do a similar mop booleans or what you see Torfrick use a lot with his kit bashing, model bashing workflows, but with Mesh Fusion.
But yeah, you can eliminate whole regions of geometry, leaving even behind holes that previously really couldn't do with Mesh Fusion, and actually use whole rigs where only one mesh and a portion of that one mesh is what's actually fusing. So you can create vents with fans inside them quickly and easily. And more importantly, you can create the impression of an additive object nested inside of a subtractive trim, which previously you really couldn't do. It'd break down. And so way more flexibility with Mesh Fusion with this fairly simple set of features.
Yeah, and so I saw that, and there is a video on that, and so yeah, essentially it brings a lot more flexibility to Mesh Fusion. I'm just showing these are actually sub-D zero mode, which is another feature.
Yeah, there's another feature that we added in there. Yep.
Right. So you can actually
start a mesh at sub-D zero. You could always bring it down to sub-D zero, but it was annoying to find the channel. But now you can start it from scratch at
right. So these are just These are just two what looked like polygonal toruses and turned into Mesh Fusion objects. And so Mesh Fusion, by the way, is Richard Yacht has put forth a couple of videos on this. I really suggest people take a look at those. I mean, the speed here is ridiculous, and it's a super. I say this every time, but it's really great technology within MODO, and it needs. I think as much training material and learning material as possible to see what we can do. I mean, try modeling. I mean, try modeling that.
Yeah,
it's like.
And as I showed Matt at Vertex last week, you can actually freeze that out into a new mesh and then hop in and actually sculpt with multi-res on top of it, and holds up shockingly well. It's incredibly versatile.
Yeah, crazy. That's awesome. So Mesh, there's always UV updates. There's always Mesh Fusion updates, and take a look at those as well. I did want to get to a few questions here before we go. I know I see they've been sort of popping up this whole time. Where's my chat window? There it is. So I know you guys have been throwing up questions the whole time. I'm just gonna throw them up again because I can't scroll back through all of these. Somebody just popped up was something. I guess Meshmerge working with VDB. I don't know if they're asking about that, but Meshmerge worked with VDB prior to 13.
Yes.
Yeah. So it does. In fact, there is a Pixel Fondue tutorial on that I made. There's sort of a Star Wars walker we're using, doing a cool effect with VDBs and Meshmerge. Okay, so here's a real basic one. How about Muhammad? How about high DPI scaling? Is this V-Ray Muhammad? You could just type in the chat. I know there's a V-Ray Muhammad who's an expert at V-Ray, but he's asking about high DPI scaling in MODO. And this still has to be done on a per application basis. Why is that even a thing?
Matt, you want to try to explain this one a little bit? It's tough. We're getting closer to that, but it's going to take a major overhaul of the UI to get there.
Major overhaul of the UI to get there. So tedious, difficult, shit work to get high DPI on the whatever percentage of the people. Do you have data on percentage of people who say you can have my data on 4K?
I know this one is a big one. Yeah, this one, and it's hard to buy a monitor that's not 4K today. So yeah, we're well aware of that one and that pain point. It's a very, very big problem. to solve. So not right now. It's something that is on the roadmap, but it's not right in the short term.
So, Kasif Riley is asking, will driven actions be updated to allow driving on the negative and positive axis? For example, browse up, positive Y, browse down, negative Y. Currently, this is not possible with the current build. So a driven action will only, well, if the action only goes in one direction, I'm guessing it's not going to apply it. I think you need to have your action going in both directions, I would think, Matt.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a good feature request. We can definitely investigate that. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
Maybe like overdriving a morph, you can do a morph to 150% and a -%, and it'll sort of drive the vertexes in the other direction. Maybe that's what Kasif was asking.
Yeah, that's what he's looking for.
It would be useful, definitely. That's something that really popped in my head, but yeah. Let's see. We've got any sculpting updates?
Nothing particular right now on that that I can think of either.
So, Greg, you're a big sculptor. What do you, as an artist, what do you want to see with MODO sculpting?
No comment. Let's just say that I have a very long list actually on my other monitor right now. It's something I definitely would like to see more of in MODO, but I also think we need to be very careful about how we go about adding new features and add them really when they're going to be truly advantageous. So that is something I would like to see, but I definitely will not commit to what that would look like yet.
Ryan, fortunately for you, the new product designer of MODO is a huge sculptor. There might be something there for you, I would think.
Yeah. I definitely would not put it in text in public or on video that's going to be reshared. So there's that. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Volker Troy, product design expert. I see he's on here. He's asking about Play Blast Love. He's probably trying to Play Blast some product animations there. So I'm not sure what that means exactly. So there's a number of I've actually used the workbench feature to customize play blasting on my version of MODO, and maybe I should do a tutorial of that. So there's a couple different ways to play blast stuff in MODO, and some of that stuff was actually hidden in the new UI, and it's
yeah, it's there. It's just not in the
animation tab, right? So I'm not sure what you mean by Play Blast Love exactly, about performance, maybe getting a little bit faster Play Blast performance. Maybe that's just an overall performance update that we're looking for. Basically, you can't Play Blast faster than MODO can evaluate, right? So performance updates will help with Play Blasting, unless you're looking for Play Blast features. Let's see. Bevel tool question mark. Okay, the Garf. There was actually a bevel tool improvement in 13. God, I should show that real quick. It was actually a pretty big one. So let me just jump over here real quick and bounce out of this. So yes, the bevel tool has been improved again. So it's continuously being improved. But this is for both mesh operations and direct modeling. But you can see this sort of inset here. So I think I was playing with this last night. So you have this depth thing here now. So it's typically like that. So you get the nice rounded edge. But now you can go 0 flat, so I think that's called a chamfer, and but you can also drive that down into the negative, and of course this will be on mesh operations as well, so you can do this procedurally and animate it and everything else. So that's a bevel improvement in 13. And I believe that tool is going to be continuously worked on, I believe, because honestly, edge beveling is one of the most important tools in any sort of modeling application, I would think. Shane, Greg.
It's the source of a lot of our conversations right now. It really is.
There's a few things that we're hoping to do for later in the series. We're trying to pick apart some of those edge use cases as much as possible, no pun intended. But it's a difficult one because it is there's many different ways to solve that problem, and sometimes it isn't so much keep piling on more and more features into that specific tool. As you saw in 12.2, we looked at a couple different approaches to creating new tools that kind of help augment some of the things that you can do with beveling. So that may be an approach that we take, for a few other things later on in the series. But I know Taz is looking at you know, a couple other things right now, and yeah, we hope to continue to improve it. It's a big part of what makes Modo, you know, unique and special.
Right.
And,
We do have, go ahead.
For good or bad, I guess.
And also, it's not actually a bevel tool, but it's related. The Relax Edge tool is amazing. The ability to alter existing bevels after the fact is incredibly valuable.
Oh yeah, you know, I didn't show that. That's actually super cool. So Relax Edge, well, essentially you have a bunch of edge bevels, and you have a lot of different edge loops in there when you do an edge bevel. And as anybody who's ever tried to go in there and manually adjust that, you might as well just jump out the window.
Yeah, no, don't.
So
that looks like magic to me.
So you have a tool now, and also I think it's a mesh operation as well, which will, it seems like all new tools seem to be implemented as mesh.
Yeah, we try to do both when we implement them.
So check out the video for that. There's a good video for that. I'm sorry, I'm losing track here. So Gerard, how well does Unity Bridge work with Substance Link? I'm not sure we're talking about the Substance Link, the third-party Substance Link that Emmanuel made. So I'm not sure we can answer that.
It probably wouldn't do anything or have anything to do with that. It's an entirely different data structure connecting Modo to Unity.
Right. Is the Unity Bridge, was that 12 or was that 13?
That was 13. Yeah, we just added the Unity Bridge. We had so we
Unreal
updated.
Bridge has been there for a while. So
Unreal Bridge has been there for a while, but Unity Bridge is in 13 now.
Yep. That's another big. There's another big feature for you.
Oh, there it is, right there in the kit.
And it's very robust. It's built. The Unreal Bridge was remade on what we call Scene Transfer Protocol, which is a backend that is much better at dealing with this data. And the next implementation of Scene Transfer Protocol is the Unity Bridge, and it leads to much faster transfers and much more reliable interaction back and forth between the applications. So it's pretty solid, got to say. Militia did a great job on that.
There's a good overview of the Unreal Bridge on Pixel Fondue. Pascal Blanc made a really nice video on Unreal and Modo on Pixel Fondue. I think it's featured right now, so check that out. And I want to see more of that. I got as far as installing Unreal. I need to find more time, but I think that's just a vastly huge area for people in Unreal.
And the quick clip video for it by Javis is by far the best of the quick clip videos this time around. I think it was like 1 a.m. and he was finishing that one. He's a little punch drunk and it's hilarious. He actually kind of put a little bit of himself into it. So kudos to you, Javis, on that one.
Right. You know, one of the things, and I'm going to get some more questions here. I just want to point to, somebody had asked earlier about getting some of Andy Brown's old videos out there. Now that he's gone, how do you put them? And Shane, maybe we need to talk about this, but I think I can create a playlist on Pixel Fondue linking to Foundry videos. And we may want to,
if you can't, yeah, let me know.
Bring some of those
I
over.
can easily change the settings so that they can be added to collections. I know sometimes that option doesn't get checked, but
it'd be good to have an Unreal playlist and have all of those on there, and a Unity playlist and have all of them. And if you looked at GDC recently, man, Unreal and Unity doing some cool stuff.
Really stepping it up, yeah. It's really impressive.
So people are asking about CAD and CAD objects and bringing in CAD files. This is something I do on a daily basis. Right now, Modo will bring in SolidWorks files, still brings in SolidWorks files, parts and assemblies. And people are asking, is there any way to bring it, natively bring in additional CAD formats? I know there's an entire licensing spaghetti with that. Shane, can you speak to that? Like what it takes to bring in something like a step file into Modo natively without getting a third-party plugin?
I think the big one that trips everybody up is we do actually import in native SolidWorks files. We've updated that to 2019 SolidWorks, I believe, with this release as well. That got touched on. But that only works on the Windows version of Modo. And that's because SolidWorks itself, the API there isn't compiled for a Mac. So a lot of people that are Mac users are getting SolidWorks files and they're not able to bring that data in. So I get that question quite a bit. The alternative approach there is to go with something like NPower's Power Translator plugin that's available for Modo. And then that you would bring in through either typically a step file or a SAT file. Same is true coming from Rhino or some other kind of a NURBS CAD modeler. Those are kind of the two best staple formats to go to. Trying a combination of one or two of those through Power Translators. and bringing that into Modo.
Yeah, there is a new program that I'll put in top picks on Pixel Fondue that I saw. It's a little more expensive than the Foundry plugin, but looks interesting, and being able to bring in a vast amount of CAD data, and I think spit it out to FBX maybe or OBJ. It is a big deal. Like anybody who does work like me, who's constantly working with products and especially products that aren't even out of the market yet, you get a lot of CAD data. And I use the Power Translator tools. I think they're great. I think they work quite well. But there's always going to be some back and forth with the designer on the other end to get everything right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a huge area in Modo. Modo rendering features absent conspicuously a little bit on this version. I think there's a pro render update for.
There's actually, yeah, I mean, there's the big new feature, pro render, which there's, in all honesty, there's a lot more work yet to be done with pro render. But we felt like it was getting to the point of being very capable. We needed a lot more people, trying it out so we have a better understanding of the hardware problems that are in the mix, because there's going to be, with anything new like that that's very hardware centric, there's going to be a lot of that to work through. So we kind of pressed ahead with that. It kind of really came to form in the 11th hour and works pretty well. But there's some really basic things missing, like shadow planes and a few other things yet that we hope to get working later on in the series. In addition to that, we've updated the optics libraries. So the NVIDIA denoiser works much better in this release. We also enabled that to work with more than just the color pass. So you can use it with like an AO pass or other special render passes that are just grayscale, as well as your color passes. And then we've added in AMD's denoisers in here as well. So if you're not on NVIDIA hardware, you now have a couple other options. And I think there's 3 different denoise options that they provide in their library that give you just a couple alternatives to use when looking at denoising options for rendering. All of those, in my opinion, are really significant improvements of what you can do rendering-wise. Just because you can get to that, 80, 90% rendering level, and then punch out the last 10% with the denoiser, and not often that last little bit is what takes the longest to render. So they're pretty nice in what they're able to do, and don't really distort the image as far as making it fuzzy and things like that. Mm-hmm. In most cases.
This is pro render right now. I'm sharing my screen with, and so you can see this is a fast machine. It's got two 2080 Ti's in it, so it's quick.
And then the new optics library takes advantage of the RTX hardware as well. So
seriously,
yeah,
finally something.
Yeah,
it's like nothing out there yet. So yeah, it's pretty quick here, and it's in there, and these are just standard Modo materials. So definitely you can jump in, and in terms of production readiness, that's up to you. Give it a shot. But this is something that's being continuously worked on and improved as well.
So behind the scenes, we have a lot of stuff going on in rendering as well. A lot of the work for the AMD stuff was really intended for us to better understand what it takes to plug in and render into Modo, us personally. And we've, over the course of a better part of a year and a half, 2 years, we've developed a lot of SDK samples and wrappers that we hope to publish later on this year. Right now, we're kind of polishing that up, cleaning it up, so that it is a little bit more consumable for other third-party renderers out there. But one of the biggest things that was of recent developed there was a lot of code or example code written around how you get information out of the shader tree, which is unique, but also very difficult to do with the current SDK inside of Modo. So we're trying to make that a little bit easier, and we're trying to essentially open up Modo so it's a lot more pluggable to a lot of different renderers out there, and hopefully we can see more of those flood into the market for all the users.
And specifically with Pro Render, we were trying to add features in such a way that we can really take advantage of what I think the shader tree is awesome, and I want to be able to take advantage of the real power of the shader tree, but that requires a very specific process of implementation of what features we support.
Yeah, a shader tree is a huge selling point of Modo, in my opinion. It is it's something that separates Modo from other programs. So no other program has. I'm just looking at the depth of field was working here. No other program has a shader tree, and doing essentially the shader tree, just going off in a quick pause. You have an incredible economy of space here, so I can work in a 3D viewport and a render viewport, and really I'm just using this little tiny area here to do all of my shading. I could jump in the schematic if I want to, but when I use something like Maya, it's just like I end up with like a render preview that's like this, because you've got the hypershade and you've got the outliner and you've got like all the stuff over here and the channel list and if you want a viewport open, it's just not a great layout. Like nodal shading just doesn't, unless you have like a 32-inch monitor, it's just not the greatest setup for just basic shading. Anyway, so there's that.
There's just a lot more control too. I mean, a lot more control, where in a lot of other applications, things are really fixed as far as render globals and global sample settings across the entire scene, or even as an application default, where in Modo that can be really fine-tuned at the per face level in some cases. So there's just a lot more control there, but that also leads to difficulty in how you collapse down that information so that it can be plugged into another render shader or render environment.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's probably a bit of a challenge where you look at I use V-Ray and Octane quite a bit in Modo, and both of them have done a nice job of integrating it with the shader tree. But I can see it's more of a challenge than something like a more simplistic system like something like Max has, where you're just kind of this item based or polygon based shading. So in Modo, I sometimes described it as just think of it as one giant mix node.
That's pretty accurate.
Parts of this you want to have.
Yeah.
So super flexible, but and also super easy to understand. But like if you start getting into like the actual hierarchy and mixing and stuff, it can get a little complicated. So okay, so I think we're getting about wrapped up here. Somebody asked about advanced viewport. There's usually some advanced viewport improvements. Was there anything in 13?
Nothing in 13.0. We got surprised by something yesterday or today that's coming in 13.1. So what's that?
UV maps?
No.
Do you want to show a picture?
Yeah, go ahead. You can show it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
let me pull it up first so that nobody actually sees.
We'll tease a little something here for 13.1.
Yeah, let me
preview.
One thing. And yeah, this came kind of as a surprise to all of us. We're like, wow, Duncan, you just make awesome stuff. Yeah. All right. So we'll go with this one because it definitely does a better job of showing it.
So to be clear, this is not 13.0.
Yep.
This is new code that if it does go well, it'll be in 13.1.
Okay.
New code?
New. Very new.
Yeah, not new code.
No.
All right. There we go. And there we go. So you can see real quick, just a quick screen capture. We have some massive improvements to the ambient occlusion in AVP. And so here we are with the old, I couldn't even really tune it with this model, which is ideal almost in many ways for ambient occlusion. I couldn't even tune it to get it to even show much of anything at all. You can see some artifacts over there. But here you can see how it completely clips out all the global illumination or the lighting from the environment, and really even gets inside all these nice little nerdy details inside the shroud. And so, yeah, Duncan did some really killer work with the ambient occlusion, and you can tune it to perform pretty well.
Did you model that assault rifle?
Yes.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah, that's rounded edge goodness, and yeah, I mean, who can't resist the opportunity to model the pulse rifle from Aliens?
The Aliens pulse rifle has, in my opinion, the best sound effect of any.
Yeah, I can hear it right now, actually.
The sound effect of the Alien pulse rifle is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm so happy they put that in Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Oh, that's huge to me, because I like the ambient occlusion improvements is a really big deal, and the current version isn't so great, and this looks fantastic. So that's big, awesome.
It is indeed. Yep. So looking forward to that and many other good things we aren't quite ready to share just yet.
Nice. Somebody asked about new learning materials. I don't know if there's anything official. Of course, there's tons of stuff on Pixel Fondue. Anything official? Oh, well, well, I know this isn't Foundry, I guess. Rich Hurry, you've been following his playlist on Pixel Fondue. He's been building up to this fully animated facial rig, which is just really super impressive. And he's going to pull that together into a rigging master course. 2 or 3, I can't remember which version he's on.
3. Yeah,
3. Yeah.
But I don't know if there's anything new, is anything specifically Foundry oriented coming out with training or no?
Not training in general. We're doing a lot around. There's another little feature in here in the UI that enables you to get alternate help. So you can do like the F1, click on a feature, and you get a little bit of a tooltip and a link to the help page. There's an option and an alternate help menu now where you can right click on that and you can get links to other things, so other tutorials, other quick clip videos, and things like that. So as we progress with this year, we're going to start wiring that up to more and more of the content that we already have available out there. But then I'm working with others out there in the community to augment our own quick clip library with a lot of other content there as well.
Oh, that's huge. And so if you think of a sort of a Vaughn and 60-second video and you want to see the new Edge Relax tool and you don't want to go to a URL or whatever, you can basically F1, right click, and boom.
Right there in the application, you can instantly right click and say, okay, well, what else is available to learn this particular feature? And
that's a huge feature. That's not a little feature. That's a big feature.
Well, it doesn't do much right now. We haven't wired it up to a whole lot yet, but we'll start doing that over the course of the year.
All right. Well, so I know, anything else you want to put forward for going forward this year on the roadmap with 13.0 performance? We keep talking about it. Matt, you're geared up to dig into that, correct?
Yeah, I'm going to put him on the spot or throw him under the bus if he doesn't deliver, literally. But
MODO performance, know that this guy right here,
right there, is responsible
busting
for
his ass, making it better. He's a human being busting his ass, working to make this better. So they're working on it, and there is a person working on it. So just keep that in mind.
In Matt's defense, it's way more than just him. There is a large group working on it. We started this effort back mid-year last year. Matt and crew have really formulated a really sound plan. Our 2 main objectives for the series are to work on mesh evaluation. So we really find that what a lot of people deem as deformer performance issues, it's not so much that, it's more so how the mesh is prepared for the graphics card. In that particular area, the draw loop is a bit of a pain point. So we're doing a lot around there. We're doing a lot with threading that process, thread pooling and thread management possibilities we're looking into. But the other, so hopefully we have some huge wins and huge success stories there. And then in addition to that, the other big pain point that we're working on is what is considered large numbers of items inside the application. So the best example of that is large numbers of materials or shaders in the shader tree will kind of bring MODO to a grinding halt many times. So there's a lot of things that we can do to optimize a lot of old code, take a look at just how often it's blasting different things again in the draw loop and things like that to streamline that. And I don't know if Matt wants to add any of that. He's been very deep into this the last few weeks and hasn't surfaced for error for a little while until today. So we let him out of his cage today.
No, Brad, we're seeing some good results. So yeah, I think there's going to be some interesting things along the 13 series in the 2 areas that Shane says. But I think we're also just chipping off little performance things across the application. So we're seeing not just in those main 2 areas. We're seeing, okay, we can make this little thing slightly faster. We can make this little thing slightly faster, and I think it's going to give the application, I think, just the performance boost it needs. So
great to hear. So looking forward to that. So I think we're going to wrap up here, people looking for a second array examples. There's going to be some more array examples already, I think, put up on the quick videos, and you'll see more in the forums and on Slack as this is moving forward. Pixel Fondue, I want to point out Matt Mearsbergen is putting a really cool series together with Character Box and just a whole video. He does a lot of national commercial spots, and he's a very experienced animator and is doing some really cool stuff there. So I would check that out, and also Rich's stuff I've been pointing out. I'm trying to think of anything else.
There's so much, there's so much really great stuff going on in the community right now, being developed outside of what we do. It's absolutely fantastic, and I really thank you guys there at Pixel Fondue for helping to put a spotlight on all of that, because it's just popping off everywhere right now, and it's really good to see and fun times to be in Modo Land, I think. Yeah.
There's some new. I know Mario Baldi's working on more plugins. Tropism, it's close. That really cool tree thing.
That is so amazing.
Have you been on that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I desperately want that.
Well, what do you think of that, Matt? I mean, that has to be built on some of your work. You must be excited.
I'm blown away by the guys constantly on the kind of coding section of the Slack, and just seeing what people are putting out there with the tools. I think it's great to see kind of other people picking up the baton of the procedural system and building brilliant tools with it. They're really doing a great job. I think the tropism stuff, I'm with Greg here. I want to play with it. I want to get a copy of this and
it looks too good. It really does. But like, I believe it. I believe the hype. It's amazing looking.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome, and especially with some of the new tools here with particle systems going into merge meshes and being able to feed that probably into tropism as points for. It's going to be like some really cool stuff. All you guys fixated on Houdini, you'll be able to do some really cool stuff over here. So, all right. So, Shane, Greg, Matt, thanks a lot for doing this, and yeah, let's look forward to the next release of Modo, and I will get Tropism and any we'll have another one of these pretty soon with some of the new plugins coming out. And keep your eyes on arrays. And you guys have a good week.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Greg.
All right, thank you. All right, everybody, take care. Thanks, guys, for chiming in on the chat. And we are out.